Lily Carter, 38 years old, is the marketing director at a large tech company in Chicago. She is an independent person who devotes herself entirely to her work. After a 2-week business trip to New York, Lily returned to her apartment, looking forward to some real rest. She had eagerly awaited quiet evenings alone in her familiar space, sipping a glass of wine and relaxing after long, stressful days. But when she opened the door to her apartment, everything she had expected was gone. The sound of music was blasting from inside, accompanied by laughter and loud conversations. Lily paused for a moment, unable to believe her eyes. Her apartment, the place she had meticulously decorated and built with her own hands, was now filled with people she didn't know. It was crowded with strangers and even some family members she hadn't heard from. She couldn't make sense of what was happening. Her apartment, which was supposed to be her personal sanctuary, had turned into a large party venue without her consent. She slowly walked into the apartment, passing through the living room where everything was out of place. The furniture, which she had carefully chosen and arranged, was now disorganized. The table was cluttered with food and drinks in a haphazard manner. Strangers were walking around, chatting and laughing as if they owned the place. Everything she had worked so hard for was now treated carelessly. She couldn't understand what was happening. This wasn't just a house. It was where she had invested so much of herself. It was her safe space, a refuge from the demands of work and the world. And now, it was overrun by people who had no respect for her boundaries. She felt violated, betrayed, and confused. Lily stood still for a moment, trying to absorb the scene before her. She had always been someone who valued personal space, and this was not just an invasion of her physical space, but also of her emotional boundaries. She had worked tirelessly for everything she had built, and now it was all being taken away from her, not by force, but by neglect and disregard. Determined to find out how and why this was happening, she made her way to the kitchen, hoping to find her mother and brother. She knew that they were most likely involved in this chaos, but she couldn't understand why they hadn't consulted her first. She entered the kitchen to find her mother, Diane, wearing a white apron and directing the caterers, moving through the space like she owned it. When Diane saw Lily, she didn't react with surprise or joy. Instead, she simply looked at her blankly, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. "You're back early?" Diane said casually, without any warmth or excitement. "We're hosting a family gathering, didn't you know?" Lily stood frozen, her frustration and confusion mounting. "You're hosting a gathering without even asking me? Why didn't anyone tell me about this?" She felt her pulse quicken as she spoke, the tension in her chest growing tighter with every word. Diane stopped what she was doing, looking at her daughter in confusion. "Well, you're always busy with work. We thought you wouldn't care. Besides, we wanted to get the family together." Lily's frustration turned into anger. "This is my home, my space. You can't just invite people over without telling me. I didn't give anyone permission for this. You can't just take over my house." Diane looked at her daughter, as if she had no idea what Lily was talking about. "It's just a family gathering, Lily. Why are you making such a big deal out of it? You always say the house is too big for just you. Why not let us enjoy it together?" Lily felt like her world was spinning. Her mother's response, casual and dismissive, only deepened her sense of betrayal. She had always made it clear that her apartment was her sanctuary, a space for herself to unwind after work. She had built this life, this home, with her own hands. But now, it was... "You don't understand," Lily said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I need my own space. I've worked so hard for this. And now, you're just taking it away from me without even asking? Do you think I'm just going to let you do whatever you want with my home?" Her mother's expression softened, but it didn't reach her eyes. Diane let out a long sigh, as if she was weary of the conversation. "Lily, don't be so dramatic. We just thought it would be nice for everyone to get together. You're always working, and it's been so long since we've all seen each other. Why can't you just relax for once?" Lily's heart sank. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, and she realized that Diane didn't understand her at all. For years, her mother had assumed that Lily's work came first, that she could just sacrifice her personal boundaries for the sake of the family. But Lily couldn't continue living this way. She couldn't keep giving up pieces of herself for a family that didn't respect her space or her needs. Feeling the weight of the moment, Lily turned and walked into the living room. She needed to find her brother Mark and confront him about his involvement in this chaos. Mark was always the one who could get away with things with a smile and a wink, never taking responsibility for anything. He had never understood Lily's desire for a private, quiet life. He always assumed that everything would be handed to him without effort. When she found him, Mark was sitting on one of the couches, chatting with a group of friends she didn't recognize. His face lit up when he saw her, but it wasn't with the warmth Lily had hoped for. Instead, he looked at her with mild amusement, as if nothing was wrong. "Oh, you're back early?" he said, his tone casual. "We're just having a little family gathering. It's no big deal." Lily couldn't believe her ears. She had asked him directly, and he had no response other than a shrug. "You're having a party in my apartment, and you didn't even ask me?" she said, her voice rising with the anger she had been holding back. "How can you think that's okay?" Mark, always the one who never took anything seriously, laughed lightly. "Come on, sis, relax. It's just a family thing. You work all the time, and we thought you'd be busy. It's no big deal." Lily's frustration reached a boiling point. "It is a big deal, Mark. This is my space. You can't just take over without telling me. I've worked so hard for everything in this place, and now it's being treated like it's nothing." Mark's response was nonchalant. "You're making a mountain out of a molehill, Lily. Just let everyone have fun." Lily stood there fuming. How could they not understand? She felt like a stranger in her own home. It wasn't just about the party. It was about respect. It was about boundaries, about having the right to control her own space. She had spent years building a life for herself, and it was being disregarded by the very people who were supposed to understand her the most. She took a deep breath and turned to leave the room. She didn't want to be part of this madness anymore. She couldn't keep living in a place where her boundaries were trampled on by the people she loved most. It was clear to her now that the only way to regain control of her life, to protect her peace and her space, was to make a change. She needed to take a step back, even if it meant taking a drastic action. And so, as she walked out of her apartment, Lily made the decision that would change everything. She would sell the apartment. She would sell it and move away, find a new place where she could live on her own terms, without fear of invasion or disrespect. She had spent too many years trying to please everyone else, and it was time to focus on herself. The decision wasn't easy, but it felt like the only way forward. She couldn't keep going like this. Lily sat in her new apartment, staring out the window where the lights of Chicago's skyline gleamed dimly after a rainstorm. A strange emptiness filled her. Even though the new apartment was smaller and simpler, it offered her a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time in months, Lily could breathe freely. She no longer had to worry about unexpected parties or unannounced visits from family members who overstepped boundaries. It was, at last, her own space. However, while she could feel the calmness in her heart, she couldn't completely shake the weight of memories, the ups and downs that had shaped who she was today. She thought back to the years when she was a young girl, leaving her family behind to start a new life in Chicago. Those early days had not been easy. Lily had come from a small town in the East, and the life she had built for herself in this bustling city had been a challenge. She had learned to be independent from a young age. Growing up in a family with modest means, Lily had always been taught that success required double the effort. Her mother, Diane, a high school teacher, always encouraged her to pursue education, but there was always a balance she urged Lily to find between work and family. "You can't just throw yourself into work, Lily," her mother would often say. "You need to spend time with family, with yourself." But for Lily, work wasn't just a job. It was the way she defined herself. She always felt she had to work twice as hard as everyone else to be seen, to be recognized. She couldn't afford to relax. The world around her moved fast, and she had to keep up. If she didn't push herself, she feared she would remain unnoticed, stuck in the background. The first day she arrived in Chicago was a whirlwind of uncertainty. At that time, she had just a suitcase, a few clothes, and a small amount of savings she had managed to gather while working part-time jobs. There were no friends or family waiting for her here. Everything was new, unfamiliar, and intimidating, but Lily never once considered going back. She told herself she would make it here. She had no choice but to figure it out on her own. With determination, she started looking for opportunities. The first jobs she took were anything but glamorous. She worked part-time in cafes and eventually landed an internship at a small marketing company. It didn't pay much, but it opened the door to something bigger. She learned from colleagues, took on projects, and slowly built a foundation for her career. She never stopped. While her peers spent weekends partying, she sat alone in coffee shops with a cup of black coffee and her laptop, pushing herself late into the night. There was one time Lily remembered particularly well when she was tasked with a major project for a top client. The company needed a creative marketing campaign to make their products stand out, and Lily was given the responsibility. It was a huge challenge, but also an opportunity to prove herself. She worked tirelessly on the project, researching trends, brainstorming ideas, and crafting the perfect pitch. While others around her complained about demanding clients, she was the one who remained focused, determined to find solutions. When the campaign was finally launched and received positive feedback, Lily felt a rush of pride. That moment of success, when her hard work paid off, was unforgettable. It marked the beginning of her rise within the company. She was promoted and eventually became the youngest executive director at her firm. By 32, Lily had made a name for herself in the marketing world, a position she had earned through sheer hard work and perseverance. But as her career took off, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Her achievements felt hollow at times, as if they were just the result of a relentless pursuit of success. She had no time for personal relationships, no time for herself. The long nights, the constant travel, and the never-ending meetings had drained her. She had no one to share her victories with, no one to support her when she felt vulnerable. The loneliness began to weigh on her, and she couldn't ignore it anymore. Her grandfather, Maxwell, had always been her biggest supporter, and she missed him dearly. He was an engineer, a self-made man who had worked hard his whole life and had built bridges across the country. He understood the value of hard work and perseverance, and he shared those lessons with Lily when she was young. She often thought of the times they spent together, sitting in his study, learning about structural integrity and personal integrity. Maxwell had taught her lessons that shaped her throughout her life. "A Morgan never cuts corners," he would say, pointing to the intricate woodwork on his antique desk. The person who made this desk took pride in their work, even in the parts no one would ever see. That's the mark of someone worth trusting. Those lessons stayed with Lily as she worked her way up the corporate ladder, always striving to be the best and to do her best. But when Maxwell passed away, leaving his Victorian house to Lily, she was stunned by the reaction of her mother. Diane had never fully understood Lily's drive and dedication to her work. She didn't understand why Lily had chosen such a demanding career. All she wanted was for Lily to settle down, to spend more time with family. She didn't see the effort Lily had put into becoming successful. Instead, she saw her daughter as someone who had sacrificed too much for her career, someone who had abandoned the family in the pursuit of ambition. Lily felt torn. On one hand, she understood that her mother wanted to be closer, but on the other hand, she knew that her career and independence were essential to who she was. She couldn't just abandon everything she had worked for. The day Maxwell passed, Diane had expected Lily to relinquish the family home, to share it with her and Mark, but Lily had made a promise to herself that she wouldn't give up the one thing her grandfather had left for her, the one thing that represented everything she had worked for. When Lily moved into the house, she lovingly restored it, making sure to preserve its historic character while making it her own. It became her sanctuary, the place where she could feel connected to her roots while building a future for herself. But even here, her family couldn't respect her need for space. Mark, her younger brother, was always the one who took the easy path in life. He never had to work as hard as she did, and he relied on their mother for support. Diane had always bailed him out, giving him money for his failed business ventures, without asking him to take responsibility for his actions. Lily had tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy by inviting her family over for holiday dinners, offering to help Mark with his various schemes and even helping Diane with her mortgage. But every time, it felt like an exercise in futility. No matter how hard she tried, they never saw the effort she put in, nor did they respect the boundaries she had set. As Lily reflected on the years of hard work, the sacrifices, and the struggles, she realized she couldn't continue this way. She couldn't continue being the person everyone expected her to be, someone who was always there for the family, sacrificing her needs and her time for them. It wasn't healthy and it wasn't sustainable. She had built a life for herself, but it was time to reclaim it. It was time to let go of the house, let go of the expectations, and let go of the people who didn't understand her. And so, with a sense of finality, Lily made a decision. She would sell the family home and move on. It was a difficult choice, but it was the right one for her. She would no longer be confined by the boundaries of family expectations. She would no longer sacrifice herself for the sake of others. It was time to put herself first. Lily stood in the middle of her living room, her eyes glued to the chaotic scene unfolding before her. Her apartment, the place she had meticulously created and filled with meaningful pieces, was now overcrowded with people she didn't recognize. Her carefully chosen furniture was scattered around haphazardly, replaced with impromptu seating and food spread across tables, the drinks spilling carelessly. Strangers wandered about, chatting and laughing as if they owned the space. Everything she had worked so hard for seemed to be in disarray. The apartment, which had once been her sanctuary, had turned into a venue for a party she wasn't invited to. Lily stood frozen for a moment, trying to process what was happening. This wasn't just a house to her. It was her space, the place where she had found peace after long days of work. It was her home, and now it was being used without her consent, disregarded as a mere venue for social gatherings. The sense of violation and betrayal hit her like a wave. Her heart pounded as she walked through the apartment. The walls that once offered comfort now felt cold and unfamiliar. Her prized possessions, her books, artwork, and furniture, were carelessly rearranged as if they had no value. It wasn't just about a party. It was about respect. It was about boundaries. And right now, her boundaries were being trampled by the very people she loved most. The anger slowly bubbled to the surface, and Lily could no longer hold back her emotions. She needed to confront the situation, to find out how and why this was happening. She had worked too hard to let her space and her life be taken over without even a conversation. This wasn't just about a lack of consideration for her. It was about a deeper issue of neglect and a failure to recognize her needs. She marched to the kitchen, hoping to find her mother, Diane, who was likely involved in this mess. Lily had always hoped that her family would respect her need for solitude, but this was the final straw. She couldn't stay silent anymore. She had to speak up. When she walked into the kitchen, her mother was there, directing a small army of strangers, moving around with effortless authority. Diane didn't seem surprised to see Lily. Instead, she simply glanced at her as if it were perfectly normal for Lily to walk into her own home and find it filled with people. "You're back early?" Diane said casually, not a hint of excitement or warmth in her voice. "We're having a family gathering. Didn't you know?" Lily's frustration surged. "You're having a gathering in my apartment without telling me?" She couldn't keep the anger out of her voice. "How could you think that's okay?" Diane paused, looking at her daughter as though she didn't fully understand what the issue was. "We thought you wouldn't care," Diane replied dismissively. "You're always so busy with work. We didn't think you'd even want to be here. It's just a family get-together." Lily stood there, trying to steady her breath, but her pulse was racing. "This is my home," she said through clenched teeth. "My space. You can't just take it over without telling me. How is it okay that you're using my apartment as a party venue?" Diane's face softened, but it wasn't out of guilt. It was more out of confusion. She didn't understand what was so wrong with what she had done. "Lily, don't be so dramatic. It's just a party. Why are you making such a big deal out of it?" Lily's anger flared. She couldn't believe the words coming out of her mother's mouth. This wasn't just about the party. It was about her feeling like a stranger in her own home, her sense of self being disregarded. "Mum, this is my house. It's not just for everyone else to use whenever they feel like it. I've worked so hard for this space. I've worked my entire life to build something for myself, and you, both of you, just walk in and treat it like it's nothing. I deserve respect." Diane's expression wavered. She didn't fully understand, but Lily's words seemed to finally be getting through. Diane tried to soften her stance, but Lily could feel the weight of her frustration still lingering in the air. "Lily, I didn't mean to hurt you. I just thought it would be nice for us to all get together," Diane said, her tone less certain now. "We haven't seen each other in a while, and we didn't think you'd mind. You always say the apartment is too big for just you. You never spend time here. It's just a family thing. You're always so focused on work." Lily's eyes narrowed, and she took a step closer to her mother. "I told you before that I needed time for myself. I need this space to feel safe, to feel like I can relax. It's not about you or Mark or anyone else. This is my home, and if you can't respect that, then we need to have a serious conversation about what family means to us." Diane stood still, her eyes flicking downward. Lily could see the guilt beginning to form, but it wasn't enough to erase the years of neglect she had felt in her family. Diane's constant criticism of her work habits, her disregard for her boundaries, had taken a toll on Lily. And now it was the last straw. Lily's breath was ragged, but she forced herself to stay calm. "I can't keep doing this, Mom. I can't keep being expected to drop everything for the sake of family when my own needs aren't even considered. I love you, but this isn't how it works. You don't get to dictate how I live my life. I have to live on my own terms, too." Diane was silent, and Lily could see her mother's face fall, a faint flash of realization crossing her features. She had never truly understood what it was like for Lily to fight for independence and privacy. She had always wanted Lily to be more present, more available, but she hadn't respected her daughter's need for space. Lily paused for a moment, then turned and walked toward the living room. She couldn't stay in this environment any longer. She had tried to be patient, to offer understanding and compromise, but she realized that sometimes, in order to protect herself, she had to set firmer boundaries. If her family couldn't understand that, then she would need to make the decision that was best for her. She found Mark in the living room, sitting with a group of people she didn't know, laughing and chatting. Mark looked up when she entered but didn't seem to grasp the gravity of the situation. "Oh, you're back early, sis. We're having a blast. It's just a little get-together. What's the big deal?" Lily's chest tightened and her anger bubbled up again. "The big deal is that you're having a party in my apartment without telling me, without asking for my permission. You think that's okay?" Mark gave her a puzzled look. "Chill, Lily. You work all the time, and we thought you'd be busy. We didn't think you'd even want to join. Relax. It's just a family gathering." Lily could feel her patience running out. She had put up with enough. "This isn't just a family gathering, Mark. This is my home. You don't just get to use it whenever you want. I need my space, and I've asked for respect. But you and Mom, neither of you respect that. You take what you want without even thinking about how it affects me." Mark shrugged and turned back to his friends. "It's not a big deal, sis. Just relax. Everyone's having a good time." Lily felt a pang of sadness. Mark had always been the carefree one, the one who got away with everything, never having to take responsibility for his actions. He couldn't understand the strain she felt, the weight of constantly having to prove herself and maintain her independence. He didn't understand what it meant to protect her own space, her own life. Without saying another word, Lily turned and walked out the door. She wasn't going to argue with him anymore. She wasn't going to stay in this environment where she was constantly expected to give and give without any regard for her own needs. The apartment, her home, no longer felt like hers. It had been taken over not by force, but by indifference, and Lily realized in that moment that she had to make a drastic change. She needed to regain control of her life, and the first step would be letting go of this place that no longer felt like home. She walked out of the apartment, determined to make the decision that would change everything. She would sell the apartment, she would let it go, and find a place where she could live on her own terms, without fear of invasion or disrespect. It was time to take back her life. It was time to find peace again. The next day, after completing the paperwork to sell the apartment, Lily felt a noticeable shift in her mood. The first steps into this new chapter had begun, and she could already sense the fresh air of freedom. Even though the decision to sell her beloved apartment wasn't easy, she knew it was the right one. However, that didn't stop the lingering feeling of emptiness. The days spent in that apartment, filled with memories, both joyful and painful, were now behind her. It was hard to part with the place she had built with so much effort, but the idea of a new beginning filled her with hope. While the decision felt right, Lily also knew that the new life she was about to start would not be without its challenges. The apartment she was leaving behind had been more than just a living space. It had represented years of hard work, personal growth, and triumphs. But now, it was time to let go of the past and embrace something new. The weight of her family's expectations and the constant disruption of her space had made it clear that a fresh start was necessary. Selling the apartment wasn't a decision she made lightly. It had been her sanctuary, her place of peace after long days of work, but every corner of it now carried the memories of disappointment and frustration. The familiar, comforting space had become a prison of expectations, and Lily could no longer deny that she needed to break free. Letting go of the apartment wasn't just about selling a property, it was about reclaiming her independence and finding a place where she could truly feel at home. Lily had put off contacting a real estate agent for days, unsure of how to approach the sale. She was torn between the attachment she had to the space and the undeniable truth that she couldn't stay there anymore. She had spent so many years making it her own, and yet now it was a place filled with unresolved tension. The apartment had once been a symbol of her hard work and success, but now it felt like a burden. It was time to cut ties and move on. When Lily finally made the call to a real estate agent she had known for a while, she was met with a professional yet understanding tone. "Of course, Lily, I can help you with that. If you're serious about selling, I'll come by and do an assessment right away." As soon as the agent arrived to assess the apartment, Lily felt a mix of emotions. The agent walked through the rooms, making notes, commenting on the apartment's potential. "You've done a beautiful job with this place," the agent remarked. "The location is fantastic, and it's got a lot of character. With a few changes, we can make sure this sells quickly." Lily nodded, trying to ignore the lump in her throat. She knew it wasn't just about the apartment anymore. It was about moving on from everything it represented. The agent offered her a fair price, but Lily was still hesitant. She wanted to sell it for enough to give her the freedom to start fresh, but she also didn't want to overvalue the apartment. She had to find the right balance. Over the next few days, Lily received several inquiries from potential buyers. Some expressed interest in the apartment, but there were too many conditions that didn't align with her goals. Others wanted to negotiate a lower price, which Lily wasn't willing to accept. She had set a price that she believed was fair, and she wasn't going to back down. Then one day, she received a call from a prospective buyer who seemed genuinely interested in the apartment. He was a real estate investor who specialized in buying and restoring properties like hers. After an initial visit, the buyer made an offer. It was slightly below the asking price, but it was reasonable given the current market conditions and the need for some repairs. Lily was taken aback at first. The offer was lower than what she had hoped for, but it was clear that this buyer was serious and would close the deal quickly. After careful consideration, she decided to accept the offer. The idea of moving on and finally shedding the weight of the past made her feel a sense of relief. It didn't take long for the sale to go through. The paperwork was finalized, and soon Lily was no longer tied to the apartment. As she signed the last document, a sense of finality washed over her. She felt like a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. The decision to sell the apartment had been a difficult one, but it was the right one for her. She was free to start fresh, to find a new place where she could truly feel at home, where her space would be respected, and where she could finally live life on her own terms. With the sale complete, Lily began looking for a new place to live. She wasn't sure exactly what she was looking for yet, but she knew she wanted something smaller, simpler, and more intimate. something that would allow her to start anew without the baggage of the past. A place where she could breathe easy, where she could create a space that reflected who she had become, not who her family or anyone else expected her to be. The search for her new home wasn't immediate. She spent a few weeks exploring different neighborhoods, considering apartments and small houses. Lily wasn't looking for anything extravagant. She just wanted something that felt like her own, something that wouldn't be encroached upon by others. She visited several places, but none of them felt right. They all lacked the warmth and sense of peace she was looking for. Finally, one day, Lily found an apartment in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. It was smaller than her old place, but it had a charm about it. The space felt warm and inviting, and she could see herself living there, enjoying the solitude she craved. The moment she stepped inside, she felt a sense of calm wash over her. This was the place. This would be her new home. She immediately made an offer, and within a week the deal was done. The apartment wasn't as large as her previous one, but it was perfect for her. It was quiet, private, and situated in a neighborhood where she felt comfortable and at peace. The best part was that it was hers, truly hers. No more parties uninvited, no more family overstepping boundaries. This apartment was the fresh start she had been longing for. As she moved into her new apartment, Lily felt a deep sense of gratitude. She had finally taken control of her life. She had made a decision that would allow her to create a space that reflected her true self, one where she could feel safe, grounded, and at peace. She knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter in her life, one that would allow her to fully embrace who she was and what she wanted, free from the weight of family expectations and the pressures of the past. But as Lily unpacked her belongings and arranged her new home, she also realized that her journey wasn't over yet. She had taken the first step by leaving the apartment behind, but there was still much to figure out. The relationship with her family was far from perfect, and while the decision to sell the apartment had freed her from the physical constraints of her old life, there were still emotional ties to untangle. The road ahead would be long, but for the first time in years, Lily felt hopeful. She was in control now, and for the first time in a long time, she could truly say that she was living for herself, and that in itself was a victory. The day after finalizing the sale of her apartment, Lily felt a noticeable shift in her mood. The first steps into this new chapter had begun, and she could already feel the fresh air of freedom. Although the decision to sell her beloved apartment was not an easy one, she knew it was the right one. However, that didn't eliminate the lingering feeling of emptiness. The days spent in that apartment, filled with memories, both joyful and painful, were now behind her. It was hard to part with the place she had worked so hard to create, but the idea of a fresh start filled her with hope. Though the decision felt right, Lily also knew that the new life she was about to start would not come without challenges. The apartment she was leaving behind had been more than just a living space. It had represented years of hard work, personal growth, and triumphs. But now, it was time to let go of the past and embrace something new. The weight of her family's expectations and the constant disruption of her space had made it clear that a fresh start was necessary. Selling the apartment wasn't a decision she made lightly. It had been her sanctuary, her place of peace after long days of work. But every corner of it now carried the memories of disappointment and frustration. The familiar, comforting space had become a prison of expectations, and Lily could no longer deny that she needed to break free. Letting go of the apartment wasn't just about selling a property. It was about reclaiming her independence and finding a place where she could truly feel at home. Lily had put off contacting a real estate agent for days, unsure of how to approach the sale. She was torn between the attachment she had to the space and the undeniable truth that she couldn't stay there anymore. She had spent so many years making it her own, and yet, now, it was a place filled with unresolved tension. The agent finally came by, and after a few minutes of walking through the apartment, he told her, "You've done a beautiful job with this place. The location is fantastic, and it has a lot of character. With just a few changes, we can sell this place quickly." Lily was torn when she heard his words. The idea of selling it, of letting go, seemed more real now. But it wasn't just about the apartment. It was about moving forward, reclaiming her space and her life. After some thought, Lily accepted the agent's price suggestion, feeling a wave of relief mixed with sadness. It was time to move on. Soon the sale process started, and within weeks, she found a potential buyer. someone interested in restoring the old Victorian charm of the apartment. The offer was slightly below her asking price, but it was reasonable given the state of the apartment and the speed at which the transaction would be completed. Lily accepted the offer, and once the paperwork was signed, she felt like a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. With the sale of the apartment, Lily began to look for a new place to call home. She knew she needed something smaller, more intimate, something that would allow her to start fresh. She wanted a space that was hers and hers alone, where she could breathe easy and feel truly at peace. The search wasn't immediate, it took time, but eventually she found a smaller apartment in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. It wasn't as large as the one she had just sold, but it felt right. The moment she walked in, she knew it was the place she had been looking for. It was intimate, private, and comfortable. After she signed the lease and settled into her new space, Lily felt a sense of relief wash over her. She was starting again. She had freed herself from the constraints of her old life. Her new home wasn't just a place to live, it was a fresh start, a place where she could finally be herself without worrying about the expectations and interference of others. She had her own space again, and it was truly hers. But the journey wasn't over. As Lily began to settle into her new apartment, she couldn't help but think about her family, especially her mother. Despite everything that had happened, Lily still loved her family. She had made the decision to take a step back, to create boundaries, but that didn't erase the love she had for them. She realized that, while the space was important, her emotional connection to her family was still something she needed to navigate. A week after moving into the new place, Lily received a text from her mother. It was short but to the point. "Lily, I've been thinking a lot. Can we talk?" Lily's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't spoken to her mother since the sale of the apartment, and while she had moved on with her life, she knew this conversation was inevitable. She wasn't sure what to expect, but part of her hoped it would be an opportunity to finally clear the air and heal their relationship. The next day, they met at a coffee shop, a neutral space where they could talk without the pressures of home hanging over them. When Lily saw her mother walk in, she couldn't help but notice how much older Diane seemed. The usual vibrant energy that her mother radiated was replaced with an exhaustion that was hard to ignore. Diane took a seat across from Lily, her eyes filled with a mixture of regret and hope. "Lily, I know I've made mistakes," Diane began, her voice shaky. "I've been thinking a lot about everything, the way I've treated you, the way I've always tried to control things. And I'm sorry." Lily felt a lump in her throat. She had waited for this moment for a long time, but hearing her mother admit that she was wrong brought up a rush of emotions. She had spent so many years trying to please her, trying to live up to her expectations, only to feel like she was constantly being pulled in every direction. "I don't want to lose you, Lily," Diane continued. "I know I've hurt you, but I want to try to understand. I want to try to respect your boundaries from now on." Lily felt a sense of relief, but also a deep sadness. The pain of the past was still fresh, and while she appreciated her mother's honesty, she knew this wouldn't fix everything overnight. It wasn't just about the apartment or the gatherings. It was about the years of feeling unseen, unheard, and misunderstood. "I love you, Mom," Lily said softly, "but I also need to love myself, and that means I need space, I need boundaries, not just for the apartment, but for everything else too." Diane nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. "I understand, Lily. I promise I will try to be better. I don't want to lose you. I don't want to keep making the same mistakes." Lily felt the tension in her chest loosen. This wasn't the end, but it was a step toward healing. She didn't know if her relationship with her mother would ever return to what it once was, but for the first time in a long time, she felt that her mother understood her, really understood her. The conversation ended with tentative promises. They didn't make any grand declarations, but Lily left the cafe feeling lighter, knowing that she had set the groundwork for something better. She was still on her journey to healing, to rebuilding her life, but she knew that this step was important. As spring arrived, Lily began to feel more at peace with her decisions. She had moved into her new apartment, and though it was smaller than her previous place, it was filled with comfort and peace. It was a place where she could finally breathe, without the constant weight of other people's expectations hanging over her. In the months that followed, Lily focused on herself. She continued to work hard, but she made time for the things that truly mattered. She took up yoga and meditation to clear her mind, and she started to reconnect with old friends, people who had known her before the pressures of work and family had taken over her life. She even took weekend trips to nearby parks, allowing herself to explore new places and find joy in the little things. She also started writing again, something she had abandoned years ago. Writing helped her process her thoughts, reflect on her experiences, and express the things she had kept buried for so long. It became a therapeutic outlet, one that she hadn't realized she needed. As Lily continued to work on her personal growth, her relationship with her family gradually improved. She and her mother spoke more openly, and while things weren't perfect, they were on a path toward understanding each other better. Diane was making a genuine effort to respect Lily's boundaries, and Lily was learning to communicate her needs more effectively. Though it took time, Lily realized that, by setting those boundaries, she had not only protected herself, but had also begun to rebuild the family relationships that were most important to her. She had reclaimed control of her life, and she was no longer willing to sacrifice herself for the sake of anyone else. For the first time in years, Lily felt truly at peace, and with that peace came a newfound sense of confidence. She was living for herself now, and she was ready to embrace whatever came next. After the conversation with her mother, Lily felt a significant shift inside her. It wasn't a dramatic change, but it was enough to make her realize that for the first time in a long while, there was hope for something better. Her mother's apology was not enough to erase the past, but it was a step in the right direction. It was a conversation they needed to have. Although they hadn't solved everything, Lily felt a weight lifted from her shoulders. She could finally breathe a little easier, knowing that her mother, for the first time, understood that she needed space. But the road to true peace was still long. Lily had made a decision. She had sold the apartment and moved into a new place, a fresh start in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. It wasn't perfect, and the road ahead was uncertain, but Lily felt something different in her new home. There was no longer the constant pressure to meet expectations, no more worries about boundaries being crossed. In the first few weeks of her new apartment, she made a routine. She spent mornings sipping coffee, taking time to just sit, think, and plan. She had always been so focused on her career that she had forgotten to enjoy life. Now, for the first time, she could appreciate the little things, the stillness of her apartment, the sound of birds outside her window, the comfort of her own space. It was hers, and it felt like a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. But as much as the new apartment was a refuge, Lily knew she couldn't stay in a state of emotional stagnation forever. The next step in her journey was about more than just a physical space. It was about addressing the deep emotional wounds she had been carrying. Wounds from her family, her career, and her own self-doubt. She realized that to truly heal, she needed to invest time in herself and reconnect with the things that had always brought her joy. She took up yoga, something she had always been curious about but never had the time for. Meditation followed, and for the first time she allowed herself to sit still and reflect, letting go of the constant hustle of her previous life. At first it was difficult. Her mind raced with thoughts of work, of her family, of the things she had yet to do. But over time, Lily learned to calm her mind, focusing only on the present moment. She began to appreciate the silence and the space in her life, something she had never known how to fully enjoy before. Lily also made an effort to reconnect with herself in a creative way. She started writing again, journaling her thoughts, and even dabbling in poetry. Writing had been an outlet for her many years ago, before she had buried it under the weight of her career. It wasn't about making money or achieving success, it was about expressing herself, giving her mind a release and reconnecting with her inner world. Each time she wrote, she felt a little lighter. The weeks passed, and Lily found herself enjoying her newfound routine. She would take long walks in the park, something she had always wanted to do but never had time for. She discovered new places in the city, cafes and bookstores she had never noticed before. It was as if she was rediscovering the world around her. Slowly but surely, she was finding joy in the simplest of things. Still, there was something missing. While she enjoyed her time alone, there were moments of loneliness that crept in. She had always been independent, but she also realized that part of her healing journey was about reconnecting with people who mattered. She had pushed so many away over the years, focusing on her work and her own struggles, that she had lost touch with those who could support her emotionally. One day, Lily decided to call her old friend Hannah. They hadn't spoken in months, but Hannah had always been a steadfast presence in her life, even when things were difficult. When they met for coffee, Lily immediately felt a sense of comfort. It wasn't about talking through the details of her life, it was about simply being present with someone who truly understood her. As they sat and talked, Hannah listened without judgment, offering only kind words and gentle encouragement. "You know, Lily," Hannah said after a long pause, "you've been through a lot, but you're doing the right thing. You're finally putting yourself first. I'm proud of you." Lily felt a warmth in her chest, a sense of gratitude she hadn't realized she was missing. She had spent so many years trying to live up to everyone else's expectations, and now, for the first time, she was living for herself. Her relationship with her family was still strained. While her conversation with her mother had been a step forward, Lily knew that things couldn't be fixed overnight. She wasn't going to let go of everything they had been through, but she also knew she couldn't keep holding on to the hurt and frustration. She couldn't keep giving them the power to control her emotions and her life. One evening, while sitting in her new apartment, Lily received a call from her mother. The familiar number popped up on her screen, and for a moment, she hesitated. Was she ready to talk to her again? Was the hurt from the past too raw? But then, with a deep breath, Lily answered. "Hi, Mum," she said, her voice steady but soft. "Lily, I just wanted to say that I've been thinking a lot about our last conversation," Diane began, her tone tentative. "I realize now how much I've hurt you, and I'm sorry. I've been too focused on my own needs and have neglected yours. I just wanted you to know that I'm here if you need me." Lily felt a lump form in her throat, but she didn't want to cry. Not now. Not when she had come so far. "It's okay, Mum," she replied, taking a deep breath. "I know you were just trying to do what you thought was best, but I need you to understand that I can't keep living according to everyone else's expectations. I need to make decisions for myself, even if that means stepping back from some things." "I understand, Lily." Diane's voice was softer now, full of regret. "I'll respect that. I just want you to be happy." And for the first time in a long time, Lily believed her. It wasn't about perfection, and it wasn't about forgetting the past, but it was a moment of true understanding between them. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. With the phone call ended, Lily felt a sense of peace settle over her. There would always be work to do, and the healing process would take time, but she was finally at a place where she could put herself first and live her life on her own terms. She wasn't perfect, and her family wasn't perfect, but they were all trying, and that was enough. As the months passed, Lily's life continued to evolve. She remained focused on her work, but also made space for her personal growth. She traveled more, explored new hobbies, and forged new friendships. She had reclaimed her peace, her space, and most importantly, herself. One quiet evening, Lily stood by her window, looking out at the city below. The world was still moving fast, but for the first time, Lily felt grounded. She had learned to let go, to set boundaries, and to prioritize her own well-being. It had taken time, effort, and hard decisions, but she had finally created a life that was hers to live, free from the pressures of anyone else's expectations. Lily smiled to herself, knowing that the journey was far from over. There would always be challenges ahead, but she was ready for them. With the strength she had gained and the peace she had found, there was nothing that could hold her back now.